facilitate today. Great. I'm going to facilitate today's kind of session with our panel of speakers and then opening it up to the floor in regards to the speakers that we have here for today. So I'm going to ask, before the first bunch of people are going to come up, I'm going to ask Hamza just to pin some of the speakers so that they'll show up in your screens when I drop the sharing of the screen. But just to do a little bit of housekeeping, guys, and just for everyone's attention, obviously we're using the format of Zoom for today's session. So I just want to mention that at the very bottom of your screen, there's a chat box function that's available to people. So I want to invite members that if you have questions for the speakers as they're happening, or at the end when we have the Q&A panel discussion, that's where you can submit your questions, and that'll be looked at by one or many of the team members who are helping to facilitate today. It's important to note, guys, that for everyone's attention, that the chat box is visible to everyone. So let's keep it professional, friendly, and positive. All right. And obviously, there may be some queries that people might have for particular panel speakers. So what I'll end up doing at the end of when all the speakers have finished their time speaking, I'll show up a quick slide, or I'll put into the chat box the communications or the emails that you can contact each of the panel speakers, that if you've a private or personal query that you want to ask, and you don't want to put it out in the public, that's okay too. And then just the last piece is just to ask, as we've so many people here today, just to say, minus the speakers, but if everyone else can ensure that they're on mute and they have their cameras off as well. So it just helps with the flow for today's session. And obviously you may have just gotten the alert or the message. Today is being recorded, and the part of the session that's being recorded is when the speakers are addressing you guys. So when we finish that section of today's seminar, there'll be a Q&A piece which we won't be recording. So just to allow that kind of safe space where people can maybe ask questions if they want to. So that won't be recorded. The link for this recording will then be issued to an all student email that'll be going out tomorrow to you all. Okay, so that's just a little bit of housekeeping for today. So I'm going to kind of kick things off a little bit, and we'll have a number of representatives from the TUD SU, the Students' Union, your advocating body, the people who represent you all. And they're going to be a few speakers from them. We have Sinead Lane, we have Adam Clark, we have Hamza, we have Aoife and Sean, who are all officers, but they're all from different sites of the campus, which is great. And they all have experiences of online and traditional exams. So they're here to kind of offer some advice as well. So I'm going to stop the sharing of the screen, and I'm going to hand it over to maybe the first speaker.
Hi everyone, just to reiterate what Scott said, thanks so much for coming along. My name is Sinead and I'm the Vice President for Welfare and Equality in Blanchardstown campus. So I suppose I had a traditional kind of experience in college, and with education, you know, I did the traditional route of primary school, secondary school, traditional leave and cert, and then entered college the traditional way through the CAO. And I recently just graduated with my degree in community development and youth work. So that was a 4-year course, and I would have had traditional exams throughout the course. So every year there would have been an exam twice a year, so at Christmas and during the summer, for each module, and also assessments throughout the year. So that kind of just would have been a little bit of a background to my experience in college. Obviously with COVID, you know, things changed a little bit. There was kind of a mixture of exam types. So there was some open book exams, and there was also some of the modules were changed to 100% CA, so continuous assessment. And it was kind of just a bit of a scramble at the time to, you know, just put something in place so people could be assessed. So if anyone has any questions around, you know, or if anyone's doing that course and they have any questions, or any other humanities courses where the layout will be quite similar, feel absolutely free to ask me and I'll try and help as best as I can. If I don't have the answer, I can find the answer for you. That's no problem. And again, just feel free to ask me anything in regards to that. Thank you.
And if I kind of come in there, Sinead, just even ask you a question, like what tip or what type of approach to studying or preparing for the exams helped you actually, if that would be okay, maybe for just
yeah,
from you.
Absolutely. So I'm sure we're all aware of the age-old saying, which is, you know, prepare to fail or fail to prepare. Is that a fail to prepare to fail? So I think being prepared is really, really important. And I know it's kind of a bog standard tip that everyone gives, but I do think it really is, you know, worth its weight in gold, because there's nothing worse than not being prepared or not being ready for your exams and just kind of, you know, scrambling last minute to kind of look over bits, and, you know, you don't have a clue what's going on. So I think if you have all your kind of revision notes ready, and, you know, you start preparing, even 2 weeks in advance is plenty of time. You know, I think that's it's really beneficial to do. Even like a little bit of study is better than no study. So even if you can do like even 1 or 2 hours a day for a week, like it's going to be so much more beneficial than not doing anything at all. Or, you know, sometimes people think they're studying and they're not actually studying, and that's kind of a trap that I found myself in during the leaving cert, which is, you know, you're spending hours and hours writing out notes and notes and just rewriting stuff, and you're not, like, it's pointless. So I think just sitting down, you know, if you know what your style of studying is, what works for you, whether, you know, you're a visual person. I know there's a couple of different tests you can do online to find out what style of studying suits you. So I think once you know your style of studying, and just even do an hour or two a day, like, it's really, really beneficial.
Great. And that's really wise, you know, that piece about even preparing a small bit, however late it is, will still help. So that's really wise. Maybe to bring in Adam a little bit here. Adam, do you want to maybe just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what helped you with exams back in your time? Not that long ago. Sorry. Oh, Adam, I think is there mic issues or sound? We're not getting any sound from Adam. Maybe just in the meantime, we might bring in like Hamza or maybe Sean, if Sean is there.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, Adam, we can. Yeah, work
sorry,
away.
apologies. Hello, everyone. I'm Adam, and I'm currently your VP for Events and Engagement on CE Campus. And a lot like Sinead, we kind of been through the same kind of experiences, like kind of like the traditional kind of exams on the run up to before COVID hit. But I'm kind of different. I didn't come straight from school, so I came from PLCs. So I finished school a long time ago. I won't say how long ago, but yeah. So I went and done the kind of the PLC route, and that kind of gave me kind of little tiny tips and kind of trips to kind of retain the knowledge up through before I started my degree. And by the time I got to my degree, none of that helped. You know, it was a completely different system. So I kind of fell into the trap of, you know, panicking when coming up to like exams and stuff. And it was kind of, I imagine everybody goes through the same kind of anxiety. Like, you know, we have to find your own kind of your style and how you retain knowledge and how you kind of study along. So like how I kind of deal with it is I kind of trial and error, you know. So I tried kind of all the kind of styles at one stage, and the one that stuck with me was study groups didn't work for me. So I kind of needed to get all the distractions away from me as much as possible. So I studied alone. I wrote down my questions that I knew were kind of coming up from studying past papers. So past papers are really good tool to kind of prepare yourself of what's kind of coming down the road. So I would I'd pick a question from a past paper and I'd try my best to answer off the top of my head, and then I'd go research the stuff and see what gaps I could fill in for myself to actually make the answer that I've previously given that much better. And then looking back at the research answer and my original answer, you can see how much better the research answer is. So if you kind of take that kind of aspect, I know it's a bit time consuming if you want to do that too, but it's just one way that worked for me. Look at the past papers and finding your feet on which style is for you. So that would be my like top tip around coming up to exams. And again, it didn't happen overnight. You know, it was probably the first year was my kind of the whole first year of exam seasons was me kind of trying to find what was best for me. And by the end of my career of a degree, I knew what worked for me, and it made it that much easier. So investigate yourself, what style kind of works for you, and what doesn't work, and what doesn't work kind of stay away from, and then try to find the things that do work.
That's really, and again, that's it's really wise talking about the past exam papers because the resource that they can offer. And I think it's important for people here to be aware. You can access, maybe you guys can clarify, they can access the exam papers through the library services, isn't it? And it gives a really good insight to the structure, the score, the marking, but what will be given for different questions and that, and just to become a little bit familiar about what will be presented to them, perhaps, when they go into the exam. Would that be true?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, because I come from courses, like it's kind of half practical, half theory based. So I don't film and broadcasting. So you kind of have to learn the both kind of sides of it. And then when COVID hit, all that went out the window, obviously. But lucky enough, we didn't have to do final year exams. It was all CA based. But at the same time, learning that about exam season and what kind of works for you really makes things easier for you in the long run. And now to this day, when you know how you take in knowledge, even after like my degree, I can study now. I can study stuff I need to know, and just getting to know yourself really helps down the line.
And I think it's really wise again in that trial and error, so that the students who are attending here today are going to hear about a number of approaches to doing studies, and it's about really trial and error, see what fits for you. And I think that's something that Sinead was also saying as well. Hamza, can we bring you in here as well?
Yeah, that's no problem at all. Hey guys, my name is Hamza. My name is Hamza Jama, and I am the education officer in the City campus. And I studied pharmacy technician as well as nutraceuticals, nutrition and health in Calibre Street back in the days. Just before I kick off with my little study tips and what I do for exams, I know Bill kind of put in a username with exam papers. Yeah, there is a generic one. It is Thunder Road, if I'm not wrong. It's capital T, and then it's just Thunder Road all in one if you're looking for exam papers. Just with exams myself, I actually did use exam papers myself. My course was very much as I had labs, so I have lab practicals, I had CAs as well. So they were like broke up in percentages where I did lab reports would go towards a specific module. And then as well, when I was studying, as well, like Adam, I couldn't like study in a library. Like it was too quiet for me to study, and I did much prefer study groups. So it's just kind of finding your feet on what works for you, kind of just what Adam said. So I always studied in the computer room myself, with my friends, and kind of just helped each other answering questions on the exam papers. As Adam said, exam papers are the best way to kind of study for like what worked for me, because we would do like every single year for the exams, and sometimes as well we would have went into class for review week. Even coming towards the end of term, we'd go into every class, because lecturers do kind of give you tips and little hints on what is coming up in the exams. So it's best to kind of go into your last few classes, even if it's a week before exams. Do go, because lecturers will give you hints on what's coming up in the exam, which will help you a lot. And then you're kind of looking at exam papers. For myself, I had, like, as I said, 7 modules each semester, I'd say, for exams. So what I did was I got my assessments out of the way. So I tried to get all of them out of the way before I started studying, because then that's out of the way, all sent in, and then I had time to study. So I kind of had a timetable set for what day I would study for what module, because it kind of really helps if you have a timetable going, because I had 7, so I kind of had to break up my time on studying. And I would have like statistics, thermodynamics, which is kind of mathsy based, and then I had theory based. So I would do, if it was like statistics, I would do all the questions I could in the exam paper, because once you write them down, you're more inclined of kind of retaining that information. Whereas if you're just kind of like looking at a screen and like, okay, this is that, you won't kind of, the information really going. So even if you are studying, kind of jot stuff down and then kind of cover it and then try writing it back, and then just kind of doing that over the weeks, I kind of just remember things at the back of my head, as well, especially with maths as well. Going into exam, I was like, oh, I did this similar question, and I just fly through it. So just little things like that. So, and lecturers don't really want you to fail as well, believe it or not. They're trying the best for us to kind of pass every exam that you're going to have. And there's nothing to be worried about exams or failing. There is a time for yourself to kind of repeat it back in August, or like even myself, one of the times I did, like, unfortunately get 37% in one of my exams, but because I did well in my other modules, I was able to compensate to pass that particular module, so I didn't have to repeat it. So there is compensation as well if you do kind of get below that threshold, where you can use percentages from your other modules that you did well in to compensate for this and pass your exam. So that's it. Just kind of exam papers, kind of jot stuff down, and yeah, and just kind of keep time management is the best. And do go out for exercise as well, and get a fresh breath. Don't just be like staying in studying 24/7, because just kind of get your exercise in times as well. But I think that is it from myself. That's
Brilliant.
yeah.
No, that's really good. And it's really interesting hearing each of you guys have your own personal approach to doing exams. So if you were to take that piece that Sinead had said earlier, which I think is really powerful, that we sometimes compare ourselves to others, but actually people are just personalizing their own approach to it, aren't they? So actually it's just a matter of not comparing, but finding our own kind of niche or our own approach. Is Sean on the line as well here? Sean Delap?
Unfortunately, Sean is out today.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, so we just have Aoife left here.
Yeah. So in terms of what advice would you guys give yourself then when you're coming into the exams? Just to ask you that one last question.
Do you want us to answer now, or should we go
Yeah.
to Aoife and then do it all at the end?
Oh, is Aoife one of the
Yeah,
speakers as
Aoife,
well?
yeah,
Sorry,
Aoife's
Aoife.
here, yeah.
Aoife, sorry.
You're
Aoife, do you want to come on
fine.
in?
Yeah. So hi everyone, my name's Eva. Sorry, I left my webcam in the office, so you're not seeing my lovely face today. But yeah, so I'm kind of similar to Sinead in the way that it was very traditional. I did my Leaving Cert, but I went into an arts course. So I just finished my degree in commercial modern music in the BIM campus. So what that meant was I did an audition and I had my Leaving Cert points going towards that. So BIM is kind of different in the sense, and a lot of art courses are the same, that it's not exam heavy. So I had, I think, 2 exams during my entire 4-year degree. I know people hate me when I say that. But so a lot of my degree was assignments and essays and stuff like that. So that's what my main focus was. So what I found was, I feel like this goes for either exams or for like continuous assessment and assignments, is just do a little bit every day. Don't say, oh, on Wednesday all I'm going to do is this business project. Don't do that to yourself. You will get extremely tired. You'll end up hating the subject because you've spent 8 hours doing it. Whereas if you kind of do, it could even be a half hour of the business project every day, just sort of pottering along at it. Don't give yourself a deadline of, I have to write 1,000 words today, because then you're going to feel really bad about yourself if you only wrote 500. It could be the best 500 words you've ever written, but you're going to feel awful because you're thinking about quantity instead of quality. So do it a little bit and often is my number one. But also, I know it happens to me all the time, which is, it's the day before it's due or it's the day of your exam and you panic because you don't have all your work done, or you still have an entire section to study, that sort of thing. Do not stay up all night is my like ride or die thing. It does not matter if I have not studied everything, I will go to sleep. Because staying up all night and studying might seem like the best idea, because you need to learn everything. Coffee is a thing, Red Bull is a thing, they can get you through. But when you're in your exam or the next day, the mental strain is just not worth it. Because yes, you might have studied more things, but you need sleep. Sleep helps you with your study because you have more energy the next day, but also it allows your brain to process all this information. By studying and not sleeping and pulling an all-nighter, you're impacting yourself in your exam. Your quality of work could go down because you can just be deliriously tired. So don't do that to yourself. I know we can all get in the habit of it, but seriously, go to sleep is my number one.
I would say that that's a very strong endorsement about the passions about sleep, and I think that's it's very good that you're bringing that one up as well. What we might do, guys, is we might go through some of the other panel speakers, and I might zoom back then to you then in terms of that question about the first experience. So I'm just going to bring back the sharing of my screen and just going to invite Claire, who is an academic. Claire, are you online?
I am, yeah. Can you hear me
stuff.
okay, Scott?
Yeah, I can.
Great.
So Claire, you work away with talking and tell me when to move on to the next slide, okay?
Perfect, thank you. So this is very topical. We had mentioned the exam papers and the fact that you need the password if you're accessing from outside the campus. So I can pop those links up into the chat as well, because there's one for each of the campuses. And there's just, and we've mentioned how useful they are if it's an exam type assessment that you're working on. There is just the caveat there though at the bottom that remember, particularly for May 2020 exam papers, there was probably less teaching done. So it may not reflect everything that you might be asked this time around. And then also, if you're looking at ones from the last couple of years, they would have been more than likely online exams. And again, if it's an on-site exam that you're sitting, there will be some differences there. The online exams would have been open book most of the time, although they would have been timed. So the questions tended to be more challenging for that reason. But that's something you can check with your lecturers if you're not sure. So I suppose the January 2020 paper would be a relevant one to look at, and then any before then as well. So that was all I wanted to mention there. That's just something that people often want to be aware of, and you can move on to the next slide. Thanks, Scott. Again, this is something that came up earlier, so I'm delighted there was such excellent advice from everybody who already spoke, as I knew there would be. So I knew I wouldn't have to say too much. This is just to reinforce what was already said. Pulling an all-nighter beforehand is not good for your health, and it's also not good for your long-term memory. It just means, like Dory there on the right, you'll know it for a very short period of time. I think we've all done it, and we all know that sensation that after a very short period of time, you don't remember that information that you crammed in. And it just means you're back to square one again next year. And Hamza mentioned some of the topics that he's studying, and they're certainly ones that build up every year that you need to have a solid foundation for each year. And I think the same goes for any other topic at all that you're involved in for a degree. And so how you would do that has already been mentioned by everybody. So working on a sustained basis and trying to get a little done regularly is really important. And also active learning. So I think everybody mentioned that you would have a focus. It's not just flicking through information or rewriting notes, but that you would decide, I'm going to try and answer this question, or I'm going to try and answer this question now. And then I'm going to try and answer it again later when I've reviewed the information. I think it was Adam who suggested that. I think that's an excellent approach. And to be realistic as well, as everybody else mentioned, and to plan in other activities and to reward yourself, to decide you're going to do something very sustained, maybe for half an hour or an hour, and then reward yourself, do something you enjoy, take a break, get some exercise, as was mentioned. So if we move on to the next slide, this is just some terminology that gets used, particularly for first years. This can be a little bit overwhelming. So these are some of the terms that it occurred to me that it might be useful for you to have heard of. A threshold, or sometimes called a floor, is the minimum mark that you need in a particular component for an exam, a particular assessment component. So that's something that might be mentioned from your module descriptors or from your lecturers, and that's just useful to know. I don't think you should be aiming to just get that mark, but it's useful to know, if you've had a difficult assessment, or if there's been something going on and you didn't do as well as you expected, at least you'll be able to check, well, what was the minimum I need to get there? Compensation, this is one of the safety nets that's there. So this is why it's really important that if you don't do as well as you hoped in a particular assessment or exam, that you keep going and you keep working on your other assessments and just move on. If there are related subjects, you can compensate directly from a related subject. So you mightn't do so well in one maths exam, but if you do better in another maths exam, you can compensate between them. Now, there are limits to how low the mark can be on the one that you didn't pass, but just to be aware that all is not lost if you don't pass initially. And sometimes someone will be in a difficult position after their January exams, but it'll all be okay after the end of year exams in May, because they'd have done well enough in the other exam for a related subject. Supplementals is just the name we give to repeat exams. I don't know why we call them that, but that's just what they're called, and they take place in August. And that's, again, another opportunity. Exam board is where the academic staff consider all of the results and take into account all of the information they get, which will include personal circumstances forms. So that'll all be considered and taken into account. Referred is when you have something you still have to do for the module. So it's effectively that you have to repeat something. So you're referred to read the information in your exam results and check what it is you have to do. Capped is if you are repeating, and your mark is usually capped. So it's set at 40 no matter what mark you get. And that's just the consequence of doing the repeat. But if you have a personal circumstances form, that doesn't happen. The last two, just things to watch out for, and you've probably been warned about them, and there's some really good advice on the Students' Union website. I'll pop in a link in a minute now. Collusion is when you worked with somebody else, but you weren't supposed to. So if it's an individual assignment and you've worked with someone else and you both have submitted work that's similar, there are consequences for that you don't want to have to deal with. You'd either be interviewed by your head of school or by a panel of inquiry, and you'll have to repeat the assignment, and there's a lot of things that could happen. What I would say to you is, if you run out of time, maybe look to submit something late, or maybe look to just resubmit it for a supplemental, but don't be tempted to work with somebody else in that way or to plagiarize, because as I said, the consequences are just too severe. And I'm sure it's not something any of you will think of doing, but sometimes if you're just under pressure for time, you might just make a bad decision. So just to advise you not to do that. So if you can move on to the last slide then, Scott, please. So just to end on a positive note, this was already mentioned. All of us at TU Dublin, we want to support you to perform to the best of your ability in your assessments. And that's why we enjoy our job. That's what we want to see. And we also want to get the most, want you to get the most out of being a student here. So that's the final message for me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Claire. And really great stuff you're sharing there. But I actually want to ask you a question, Claire, and as a lecturer, as an academic, and someone who's, I'm assuming you've marked a lot of papers in your lifetime, there's a piece about when a student submits, the exam. Does the marker, when you're correcting the paper, does the marker look at taking marks away from the student or look at giving marks?
That's a really good question. No, it would be giving marks. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the marking scheme for having something there are marks. So you're looking to see that it's there and the student gets the marks. No, I certainly, I don't ever look at a question at the end and go, oh, that person got 19 out of 20. That's, I'll have to bring that down a bit. No, that's certainly not the approach. No.
But it's really useful for students to be aware of that, because if they put down as much as possible, it's giving the marker permission, if it's appropriate, to be able to award marks rather than taking it away, which is really interesting, kind of a dynamic when you're thinking about exams, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I would add though, just be careful not to, sometimes someone will write a lot, but they'll actually end up having contradicted themselves, and that gets complicated. That can be, so just maybe give yourself time to read over what you've written. And sometimes a question doesn't need a lot of information, but like you said, it's important to write enough so that markers can use that information. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Claire. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next speaker. We're going to bring on Jennifer Farrell if she's there in terms of camera.
Hi, hello everybody.
Good stuff, Jennifer.
Thanks very much. So Scott, do you want to go to the first slide there?
I will. There you go.
So I'm speaking on behalf of the exams team and our student services staff. So in terms of the communications and information, the TU Dublin exams website, the exam timetables are published 4 weeks. So they're already published on our website. You can select the campus you're attending, and when students have registered, they've also been sent as part of the registration process, you'll have seen the link for the general assessment regulations. And so that's important that they're there as well. And there's different regulations for the 3 campuses. So it's good to familiarize yourself with those. And we obviously have the other thing just to note, you'll hear us talking about supplementals, but also about repeats. So where people maybe are not successful, there is the opportunity maybe to redo modules internally, or sometimes just redo the exams as well. And then we've mentioned the supplemental exams, which take place in autumn. As everybody else has said here, we don't like having to do autumn exams because it ruins our summer. So we really do hope everybody passes and do everything we can to get everybody through. So if you want to go to the next page, Scott. So one thing that is important that you're all aware of, if for whatever reason you feel that there is some issue that has prevented you from performing well or has prevented you from doing the exam or assessment at all, it's important to fill out your personal circumstances form and have that sent into the exams office. They're noted at the exam boards, and if they're accepted, it means that you won't be capped on 40% on your reassessment. So it is important. Medicals, if you have medical certs, you don't need to get the professional form completed as well. If you have other certification, that's fine. So just to let you know that that's there as well. So I don't know if you want to go on, Scott. So when the exam results come out, we're skipping ahead a little bit. So when the results are out, they're generally around February, and there'll be an email sent to you, and the link will be sent in that email. It'll be on the website. The user ID will be the same 6-digit you use for registration and paying fees, and that is the 6-digit that would have been sent in your invitation to register. You probably had to change it. It can also be reset by the exams office. If you have any issue with blocking of that PIN, then you will be able to reset it yourself, or exams will reset it for you. The exams offices, they have numbers on the website, and they can help you out with any questions. You'll see the grade codes, and sometimes they'll show you if you need to do something specific, if for some reason you haven't been successful. And also you'll be able to go in and see the component results. If you maybe the components would be where you might have different parts of the assessment. So you might have an exam, project, different things, and you can see the marks against it and how they have added up together. So that's good. So maybe the next page, Scott.
Sorry, hold on now. There we go.
Yeah, so the exam contact numbers are all here. Just following on with the timetables, I suppose, because we skipped quite ahead to the end. And as I said, everybody wants you to be successful. It's important, I think, with the exam table, just to familiar yourself with where you're going in the morning and give yourself plenty of time. One of the things that we would ask people to do is just to make sure when you go in, you give yourself plenty of time, you're familiar with the location. When you go into the room, make sure you read the paper through. And as Scott and Claire were talking about, there's questions allocated, marks allocated to each question on the exam paper. So make sure you attempt everything and give yourself time when you go in and you see how many hours you have, many papers you have, split up your time accordingly. There's clocks in all the exam halls. We put a lot of effort into getting our clocks there so that people can keep an eye on the time, and you'll get that shout out at the end when you go in. So that's just something that's really important for people to just keep an eye on. But as I said, as Claire was saying, if you don't want to write too much, but make sure you do try and attempt each question. As I said, we want everybody to get through, and nearly everybody does get through who attempts. That when people do attempt the exams, attempt the assessments, it's a good way to getting a pass. So just say that to everybody.
Absolutely. And even on that, Jennifer, is it fair to say that in one way, TU Dublin doesn't necessarily want to hang on to the students. They kind of want to get them through and get them graduated, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. And I noticed there's something in the chat there, somebody about the exams office. So if you have any questions, if you can't find a particular module on the exams, if you call that number, the 220-6001 exams number there, and that hunt line in City Campus, they'll be able to help you and let you know the information that you're looking for.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I think, yes, okay, great. That's great. Thanks, Jennifer. And I'm just going to kind of come in here, guys, just for everyone's attention, just regarding some of the support services that are listed in TU Dublin across the university, so that these resources are there to help and support you guys while you're approaching the exams, in terms of after the exams, or at any point in terms of your academic standing within TU Dublin. So what I just wanted to do was that there's a title for this, which is called Student Services and Wellbeing, that we're very much adopting over the last year. And you might be asking, who are they, or what do they do? And basically, the Student Service and Wellbeing covers areas of health, wellbeing, and support. And this also goes into emotional, personal, and academic kind of areas of problems that students may go into. So I just wanted to kind of list some of the services there, and we have a really good web link at the very bottom there for further information about each of these support services that can be of benefit for people while they're attending in TU Dublin. Well, what I do want to specifically highlight, obviously, in terms of the exams and approaching them, it's really important just to acknowledge, like, obviously the counselling service in terms of the emotional and support that they can give in their workshops, the health centre in terms of your own physical health with the nurses and the doctors, the chaplaincy service that we have, which are based in all different buildings and all the sites, which are a great resource. There's really good support for the academic learning and the academic writing centre in terms of assessments or assignments, or kind of looking at kind of organizing yourself within that space. But as one of the student speakers mentioned earlier, it's important to also to diversify how you are investing or using your time. So societies and sports are a great way to be able to release energy and to also show that there's a lot more than just the exams happening. And it's good to have a little bit of structure or a little bit of an opportunity to socially engage or to even get outside and to kind of switch things up. And that is also proven scientifically to help your concentration and your studying when you are switching things up, rather than taking the approach of 8 hours, 10 hours sitting in front of a book. So it's important to really diversify how you're using your time. So I just wanted to touch on that. So what I'm just going to do is just going to stop the sharing of the screen. And one of the other resources I wanted to mention that I haven't had a chance is that we actually have great supports with our friends in the Students' Union. So if we have an opportunity to maybe tag some of the student advisors, there's a few of them who are present here who might want to say a quick hello and just to let them know who they are and what they do. I think we've Mary Scally, who's kind of the lead wolf of the student advisors for the Students' Union. But we also have I can't see any name. I think there's Lucy's there, and then if Lucy wants to take off her camera to give a wave. Mary, do we have Trish or is the other ones there?
Sorry, not Trish, unfortunately, today, but we have Lucinda and we have Lucy and I think we have Aisling.
Ah, brilliant.
And cameras are, oh, there's Lucy.
Hi, everyone. I am the student advisor based in Ainger Street. I'm on the ground floor, just opposite the Grumpy Mule and beside student services. So drop in. Feel free to drop in. Yeah.
Great. And Aisling, do you want to say hello? Oh, there's just a mic issue there for yourself, Aisling. Could be the cable might be in or not.
Yes, hello.
There we go.
Yeah. I am based in Bolton Street, down the basement, just off the common room area. So yeah, feel free to drop in if you have any questions.
Brilliant. And then Lucinda.
Hi, so I'm Lucinda and I am the student advisor in Tala, and I am in the Student Union building just opposite the main building in Tala. So feel free to pop in anytime and I'll be more than happy to support you in any way I can.
Brilliant. That's great. And it's really important, like the guys in the Students' Union, the student advisors, they're great, like kind of one-stop shops in a way to really navigate you through some of the services and systems. So highly recommend if students have difficulties, they are also a resource to lean on, or someone who most certainly will point you in the right direction. So
Can I just say, just on behalf of Trish, who isn't here, Trish is the student advisor for the Grange Gorman campus and is based in the Braddock building, which is just across from Rathdown House, where all of the services, one of the student canteens are. So, and she's there, well, not today, unfortunately, but usually they're, like the rest of the team, very keen to help students with any queries they have. And we have a very good working relationship with colleagues like Claire, with counselling, with exams, and we are active referrals back and forth. And so please do pop into us.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Scott.
No problem. Thanks, Mary. It's like a little family. We're all here to support the students on their journey, which is really good from the academic and the professional services. So I'm just going to hand it out. I know if any students have any questions, feel free. At this point, I'm going to ask if Hamza can maybe stop the recording just to